Okay, we got breaking news. Massive breaking news. Russell Wilson is headed to the Denver Broncos. Yeah, that's kind of a big deal.
How Russell Wilson became the Broncos' biggest headache. Picture this. March 8th, 2022, Denver, Colorado. Overnight, billboards go up across the city. Giant, electric, triumphant. The Denver mayor posts a welcome message. The local sports radio station, 104.3 The Fan, puts Russell Wilson's face on a billboard the size of a building. Fans who have lived through 7 different starting quarterbacks in 6 agonizing years are weeping actual tears of relief. The Denver Post calls it one of the biggest days in the history of the franchise. Former Broncos lineman Tyler Columbus tweets, "Is this real life? It actually happened?" And then Russell Wilson steps to the mic, grins that $1 million grin and says, out loud, on camera,
"Yeah, my goal is to play 10 or 12 more years and hopefully win 3 to 4 more Super Bowls. That's the plan."
That's the plan. That's the mindset. 3 or 4 more Super Bowls. Denver didn't just make a trade. They made a promise to themselves. The suffering was over. The Savior had arrived. The city was on fire with hope. Now hold that feeling. Hold every last drop of it. Because everything you just felt, that's exactly what made what came next so absolutely devastating. To understand why Denver lost its mind over this trade, you have to understand what the years before Russell Wilson had done to this franchise. Payton Manning retired after Super Bowl 50 in February 2016. What followed was the longest, most painful quarterback spiral in modern Broncos history. Trevor Siemian, Paxton Lynch, a first-round pick, gone in 3 years. Brock Osweiler fled to Houston, flopped, and got traded away for a second-rounder Houston just wanted off their books. Case Keenum, Joe Flacco, Drew Lock, the would-be heir who wasn't. By spring 2022, the Broncos hadn't made the playoffs in 6 consecutive seasons. They had started 7 different quarterbacks. The franchise that once had John Elway and Peyton Manning had become a punchline, and the fan base wasn't just frustrated. They were exhausted, hollowed out, ready to believe in anything. Russell Wilson, 9 Pro Bowls, a Super Bowl ring, 37,000 career passing yards, one of the most recognizable athletes on the planet, was not just anything. He was everything they've been waiting for.
Russell Wilson is headed to the Denver Broncos.
The trade cost Denver 2 first-round picks.
Then you eat $80+ million on a cap, and you trade away basically everything to acquire Russell Wilson. You give up first-round pick, second-round pick, fifth-round pick, first-round pick. Then you get, and then you only thing you send to them is a second-round pick, a backup quarterback.
2 second-round picks, a 5th-round pick, plus 3 starters in Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, and Noah Fant. All of that for Wilson and a 4th-round pick. The price was staggering. Nobody cared. And then, before Wilson had played a single down in orange and blue, the Broncos went even further. On September 1st, 2022, the very day the season began, they handed Russell a 5-year extension worth $245 million. $165 million fully guaranteed. The deal would run through the 2028 season. He hadn't played a game, hadn't taken a snap.
He hadn't even stepped foot on their field yet.
No.
Like
No.
They hadn't even seen him.
In a jersey.
Wow. They didn't even give him his office yet.
Hadn't proven he could function in this system, with this staff, in this city. But the Broncos were so desperate to believe this was real, so terrified of losing him, of going back to the purgatory, that they signed away the franchise's financial future before the opening kickoff. That summer, the team filmed a promotional video of Wilson rehearsing his catchphrase, take after stiff, carefully branded take. Broncos Country, let's ride.
Broncos Country, let's ride.
Not his best.
Broncos Country,
Let's ride.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dude.
Broncos Country.
Modulation.
Let's ride.
The last one.
Broncos Country. Let's ride.
The internet started making fun of it immediately. Something about the whole carefully manufactured persona felt ever so slightly off, like a movie that looks great in the trailer but doesn't quite feel real. Nobody in Denver wanted to listen. The billboards were up. The extension was signed. The ride had begun. September 12, 2022, Lumen Field, Seattle, Washington. Monday Night Football, the most anticipated game on Denver's schedule. Russell Wilson's homecoming to Seattle, his first game back at the stadium where he'd won a Super Bowl and played for a decade. The whole country was watching. And in the final minutes, with the Broncos trailing 17-16 and the ball beyond field goal range, head coach Nathaniel Hackett, in his very first game as an NFL head coach, made a decision so baffling it stopped the league cold. He didn't give the ball to Russell Wilson. He sent out the kicker for a 64-yard field goal attempt, with timeouts still available. The new franchise quarterback, brought in to rescue moments exactly like this, watched from the sideline while a kicker lined up for one of the longest attempts in NFL history. Brandon McManus missed. Denver lost 17-16. The quarterback brought in to save Denver in moments exactly like this one had just been benched for a field goal kicker in Game 1. The weeks that followed delivered something the NFL hadn't seen in a long time. An offense that wasn't just bad, but genuinely difficult to explain.
He's not completing passes.
Not seeing like simple checkdowns or open receivers. It's weird. I don't know if his head's spinning, if there's too much going on.
Week after week, the Broncos moved like a team running in wet cement. The pass rush got to Wilson constantly. He was hesitant where he used to be explosive. The system around him fit Wilson the way a suit fits someone 3 sizes too small. Technically on, but visibly, uncomfortably wrong. And through every press conference, every post-game session, every loss, Wilson would flash the smile, step to the mic, and close with, "Broncos Country, let's ride." By week 3, it felt rehearsed. By week 5, it felt delusional.
Thank you guys. Broncos Country.
By week 8, after Denver lost their Monday night game to the Chargers and Wilson walked away from the podium mid-session without saying it at all, the internet noticed immediately. Sports media ran stories about whether the catchphrase was dead. Greenberg on ESPN said he hated that he had to make fun of Russell Wilson, then made fun of Russell Wilson. The phrase had curdled from a rally cry into a national symbol of a deal going wrong in real time. October 6th, 2022. Empower Field at Mile High, Denver, Colorado. Home game, prime time. What happened on that field was not football. It was something darker and stranger and almost impossible to describe without laughing, and then immediately feeling bad about laughing. The Denver Broncos lost to the Indianapolis Colts 12-9 in overtime. There were no touchdowns in the entire game. Both teams combined for 7 field goals, 12 punts, 4 interceptions, and 6 fumbles. The Broncos drove to the Colts' red zone late, facing 4th and 1, a moment that called for decisiveness, aggression, a quarterback play, and Wilson threw incomplete. No points, no score. Game over in overtime when Indianapolis kicked a walk-off field goal and Denver shuffled home, having scored 9 points in 60-plus minutes of professional football. Fans left before overtime. The same fans who had cried when this trade was announced, who had dreamed of Super Bowls, plural, were streaming toward the exits while their team still had a chance to win. This wasn't just bad, it was grotesque. The kind of loss you stare at in silence because you genuinely don't know what you just watched. The Broncos were 2-3. The offense was 29th in the NFL in DVOA, and the man being paid like the best quarterback in football had just been outscored in a regulation game by a kicker. Before the London game in October, Denver's scheduled trip across the Atlantic. Wilson told reporters that while his teammates slept on the transatlantic flight, he had been walking the aisle and doing high knees to keep his hamstring loose. High knees, on a plane, over the ocean, at midnight, alone. He said it the way he said everything, with complete sincerity, total confidence, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. The story spread instantly. Ravens kicker Justin Tucker posted, "Ravens flock, let's fly," as a joke at Wilson's expense.
Let's talk to us a little bit, J-Tuck.
I mean, what do you want to know? What are we doing on the plane ride back home? I heard Lamar's leading us in high knees, Ravens flock, let's fly.
By the time Wilson told reporters in London that he felt ready to roll, the phrase landed in the press box like a setup to a punchline everyone already knew. Even ordinary Wilson quotes had stopped sounding like a quarterback and started sounding like a man who'd lost track of how the world saw him. The self-presentation and the mockery ran in parallel, and the gap widened every week. By November, with Denver sitting at 3-8, the internal cracks went public. NFL Network's Mike Garofalo reported that some of Wilson's own teammates had been looking at him side-eyed when he was doing all kinds of goofy stuff all off-season into training camp. When Wilson threw a birthday party, only about half the roster showed up. This was not a quarterback losing a locker room mid-season. This was a portrait of a quarterback who had never quite connected with this one, and possibly hadn't seen it coming. Every detail that leaked made the next game feel less like football and more like watching a marriage unravel in slow motion through a plate glass window. December 25th, 2022. SoFi Stadium, Inglewood, California. The Los Angeles Rams, a team that had won only 4 games all season, hosted the Denver Broncos on national television on Christmas Day. The final score was 51-14. The Broncos trailed 41-6 before scoring their only offensive touchdown. Wilson was sacked 6 times, threw 3 interceptions, and finished with a passer rating of 53.6. The same man who had stood in Denver 8 months earlier, promising 3 or 4 more Super Bowls, was being hunted down on a holiday stage by one of the worst teams in the league. This wasn't just a bad loss. This was the entire project collapsing in public, on Christmas, in front of everyone. The next morning, December 26th, Nathaniel Hackett was fired. He had lasted 15 games. His offense had averaged 16.9 points per game, the worst the franchise had seen since 1966. The quarterback who was supposed to save Denver had just turned in the worst season of his professional career. 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, a league-worst 55 sacks absorbed, a QBR of 37 that ranked 27th in the NFL. And the Broncos couldn't do a single thing about it, because cutting Wilson at that point, walking away from the disaster, would have created a dead cap hit approaching $107 million. They were not just stuck with the mistake, they were financially chained to it. The only way out was forward.
It's going to be $85 million in dead money over the next 2 years because they traded for him, and then before he even played in a regular season game, they gave him a contract they never should have given him.
So they spent another first-round pick, traded to the New Orleans Saints, to hire Sean Payton as head coach. A first-round pick to fix what the first-round picks had already broken. The Broncos had now surrendered their first-round selections in 2022 and 2023 for Wilson, and another 2023 first-rounder for Payton. Meanwhile, Seattle had used Denver's picks to draft Charles Cross and Devin Witherspoon, 2 immediate cornerstones, and made the playoffs the very season Denver fell apart. The team they stripped to build a champion was rebuilding on Denver's bones. You cannot make this up, but wait, it gets worse. September 25th, 2023, Hard Rock Stadium, Miami, Florida. The Miami Dolphins scored 70 points on the Denver Broncos. 70 points in a single NFL game. the most any team had scored since 1966. Miami gained 726 total yards. Denver's Marvin Mims Jr. returned to kickoff 99 yards for a touchdown, the Broncos' only special teams highlight in an otherwise grim afternoon. Wilson threw for 306 yards. Denver's defense surrendered touchdowns on 8 possessions. By the time it was over, 70-20, the worst loss in franchise history, Sean Payton stood at the podium the next morning and said simply, "It's a tough film to watch." The Broncos were 0-3. The Wilson era had already survived one catastrophic season, one coach being fired, one blockbuster hire to supposedly fix things, and an entire off-season of manufactured optimism. And now, in 2023, with everything supposedly repositioned and reset, Denver had just given up 70 points on national television. You could feel it in the building. You could feel it across Broncos Country. This was not a rough start. This was not growing pains. This was something the organization could not name out loud, but everyone watching could see it clearly. The entire Broncos Wilson era was cursed. Sean Payton gave it 15 weeks. He watched the red zone struggles, the sacks pile up, the completion percentages crater. No emotional appeals, no public votes of confidence. Just the cold precision of a man who wasn't there when the deal was made and felt no obligation to pretend it was working. Then, on the morning of December 27, 2023, Broncos players filed into what they thought was a routine team meeting. Instead, Sean Payton had an announcement. He was benching Russell Wilson. Wide receiver Jerry Jeudy described the moment to ESPN directly. It was a surprise to everybody in the locker room. He just told us out of nowhere. Out of nowhere, with 2 games left, while the Broncos still had a mathematical pulse in the playoff race. But here is the detail that turns this from a football story into something else entirely. The Broncos didn't bench Wilson because of performance. The official explanation was that the decision was made to, and this is a real phrase, a real NFL franchise used about their $245 million quarterback, preserve financial flexibility. Because Wilson's contract contained a $37 million injury guarantee for 2025 that would lock in permanently if he suffered an injury before a key March date. The Broncos were benching their franchise quarterback, the man they had celebrated with citywide billboards less than 2 years earlier, to avoid being forced to pay him more money than they already legally owed him. Wilson later said team officials directly told him to waive that guarantee, or he would be benched for the rest of the season. He refused, and the team followed through with the benching. The marriage was over. What remained was just the financial wreckage and the lawyers. On March 4, 2024, the Denver Broncos released Russell Wilson. Payton and Payton issued a joint statement. Wilson thanked Denver on Instagram, notably without mentioning his head coach or his general manager by name. And Broncos Country, let's ride, quietly, finally, mercifully, died. But the bill arrived anyway. $85 million in dead cap.
In a historic move with the biggest dead cap hit, $85 million spread over 2 years will not be available for the Denver Broncos.
$53 million of it in 2024 alone, an NFL record at the time, paid to a quarterback who was earning the veteran's minimum in Pittsburgh. That's on top of 3 first-round picks, 5 total draft selections, and 3 starters. 2 seasons, 11 wins, 0 playoff appearances. Russell Wilson became the Broncos' biggest headache, but the Broncos were the ones who prescribed him. The trade will live in NFL infamy alongside the Herschel Walker deal, among the worst financial decisions in professional sports history. The Broncos didn't just lose. They would pay for the loss for years after he was gone. In April 2024, Denver drafted Bo Nix with the 12th overall pick. His cap hit, $4.2 million. His attitude? No catchphrases, no billboards, no promises about Super Bowls. Just a quarterback who put his head down, competed for the job, and led Denver to a 10-7 record and their first playoff appearance in 8 seasons. The ride Broncos Country had been promised? It finally came. It just cost $85 million in dead money, 5 premium draft picks, 3 starters, 2 fired coaches, and one of the most spectacular public unravelings in recent NFL history to find it. The dream didn't die in Denver. It just took 2 very expensive years to figure out it was never going to come from one man. If this hit you the way it was meant to, if you felt the hope, and then the slow, sick feeling of watching it collapse, and then the shock of finding out it could always get one more level worse, then you are exactly who End Zone Exposed is built for. Drop a comment right now. Worst trade in NFL history? Or does something dethrone it? Subscribe if you haven't. Ring the notification bell, because we pull the curtain back on the stories the league buries. Leave a like if this documentary delivered. We'll see you at the next one. End Zone Exposed is where the truth always scores.